I'm Jessica Kashiwabara, a writer currently living in Southern California. I actually grew up here, but I had lived in New York for about 20 years. When I think about translation, of course, I think about language, but I think I also consider being a child of immigrants. I'm Japanese American, and my parents were both born in Japan, but had moved to the U.S. as teenagers. But if I ask my father if he thinks I'm more Japanese or more American, he will of course say American. But when I lived in Japan for a year, they all said, even before I said a word, that they could tell I was American because of the way that I move my body, of the way that I even just stand. So that was really interesting to have that perspective. And I taught English in Japan, and the students, because my name Jessica sounded a bit like gesture to them, they would call me Gesture Sensei. But I think it was also because I made sort of wide gestures with my hands and face to animate the class, but apparently it kind of backfired on me as the junior high kids the boys teased me about my name. But yeah, I think about translation in that way too, about how we communicate through our bodies, and the silent things that come out in the ways that we communicate.
Hello, Rogers class. Greetings from Belfast, Northern Ireland. I'm a human rights lawyer doing a PhD in law in transitional justice and human rights here at Queen's University, Belfast. I've come here via Los Angeles, Berkeley, Washington, D.C., New York, Sri Lanka, India, Maldives, Nepal, Somalia, Tanzania, Syria, the Netherlands, and I might have missed one or two places in between. What begins with translation, you might ask? Well, in my line of work, I've gained a healthy appreciation for the centrality of translation, both at a literal and a figurative level, given that international human rights and legal norms only have real substantive meaning based on how they're interpreted and applied and understood and filtered and translated down to the grassroots and local communities, particularly in conflict-affected societies, and particularly dependent on who is doing the translating and interpreting and who the messengers of those legal norms are. And on a more literal level, given that I've been dealing mostly in multi-ethnic, multi-linguistic, multi-religious societies undergoing internal armed conflicts, and those armed conflicts are usually based on those linguistic differences, literal translation of human rights principles and norms is very much a central component of not only understanding human rights, but resolving differences amongst communities. So that's how translation fits into my line of work. I'd be interested to hear how it fits into yours. Good luck.
Hi, I am Sundus Zghari from Palestine. I worked last year with Raj on a translation project, and I was thinking recently of creating an emotional dictionary where I focus on my emotions toward the items I encounter in my life, to show the difference in my emotions towards these things. For example, my emotions towards an old gate differ from my emotions toward a new one, or toward a door, for example.
Hello, my name is Shirish Balachandra. I am a medical epidemiologist with CDC, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, serving as country director here in Côte d'Ivoire in West Africa. I met Rajneesh Chakrapani when I was probably 7 or 8 years old. We grew up together in the South Indian community in Southern California. I was very fortunate to have Rajneesh come and visit me here in Abidjan just a couple of weeks ago. What I can say about translation is that it's been central in my personal and professional life I've been speaking French for most of my adult life as a university student in France, as a Peace Corps volunteer in Cameroon, as a public health officer in Rwanda, as a medical student in Montreal, and now here in Abidjan. And I think translation for me comes in two forms regularly. One is just translating technical jargon into comprehensible English for my non-technical colleagues at the embassy, and then of course into French in dealing with the ministry, civil society, and the Ivoirian population at large.
I'm Samprajani. I was born in Cuttack, India, and raised in Bangalore. My interest to do research in microelectronics and passion for biking brought me to the Netherlands. Currently, I'm an analog designer at NXP and a PhD student at TU Delft. I first met Raj in Jigni, which is an hour from Bangalore, where we met as classmates at a 1-month-long yoga instructor's course about 8 years ago. Translation consists of a black box that converts information in one domain to another as best as it can with the least error. So, for example, if I want to go from the analog to the digital domain, I would use an analog to digital converter. Now, the type of translation could very much depend on the information one is seeking and the final application, something like a perspective. It is about joining two disjoint worlds using an interface. And this black box could be a human being or a machine. So that's my interpretation of translation. Understanding two different worlds begins with translation.